Alright, welcome to my first video on the channel. Actually, I lied, it's not my first, but it's the first one where I talk. I'm currently working on a Paul McCartney vocal series, but seeing as Paul just performed on SNL, I figured I'd put in my 2 cents on the idea. I'm someone who generally thinks that Paul should keep performing as long as he wants to. I saw him in concert back in October, and while his vocals weren't the best that they've ever been, the man is also 83, so I don't think anyone should expect that. The concert was incredible, and as long as Paul is willing to tour, I think he should. I don't believe he's necessarily hurting his reputation and legacy by singing some not so great vocals sometimes. I personally think that Paul's recent run of albums, Egypt Station, McCartney 3, and The Voice of Dungeon Lane, work perfectly for his voice right now. There's a certain vulnerability in his vocals now since his voice isn't as strong as it used to be. His voice has definitely lost its power and he can't hold notes as long as he used to. I think the lyrics are a lot more vulnerable as well, so his vocals actually fit them perfectly. He can also still scream, which I think is very important for him, seeing as he is kind of like the king of screaming. So I watched the SNL performances last night, and I think it actually wasn't as bad as you'd think it'd be. I personally think it was better than his performances on SNL a year or so ago, where he performed Golden Slumbers, Carry That Way, and The End. And I don't really want this video to get struck down by the people at NBC, so I can't really show the clips, but I'll link the videos in the description. For Days We Left Behind, I actually think his voice comes off as a lot more controlled. I think recently, with the fact that he can't sing as well as he used to, he's moved to a higher, lighter form of singing with minimum long notes, which work perfectly for the song, to be honest. I think his voice suits the song perfectly well here. There's also a lot less wavering than I thought there would be. He still has quite a bit of vibrato in his voice, but I genuinely have no issue with this performance. I think it works perfectly for this song. It's sentimental, it's nostalgic, it works well with his current voice. Now, just a side note, I couldn't actually find footage of his last SNL performance, the one with Golden Slumbers and everything else. I don't know if they took it down, I'm not sure. But I remember it being incredibly shaky, and I think you all will remember that too. And I think we should all really be pleasantly surprised by this performance, at least for this one song, though that's just my opinion. You can let me know in the comments what you guys think. But the backup singers only really came through at the end, and even then they weren't overbearing or really covering his voice. Now, I want to talk about his performance of Band on the Run. So this one was a lot more shaky than Days We Left Behind. But once again, I don't actually think it was that bad. I think it's a lot better than his previous SNL performance. Again, there isn't as much power in his voice, and Brian Ray and Rusty Anderson really help with the backup vocals, especially on parts where you can't really sustain the note. But you'll also see him do a couple of flourishes of falsetto throughout the first part of the song, which I will say the band was rocking the whole night. Big thumbs up to them as well as Paul's bass playing. The If I Ever Get Out of Here section, I believe, was pretty strong on his side. It seemed pretty normal to me. Obviously, it's not like on the album, but still much better than what I remember. And he also used a backup singer, Ingrid Michaelson. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right. Great backup singer, and she really helped him with the higher notes. Though, if you listen closely, he did waver a bit when creeping up towards the top of his range, but I don't believe it was an unreasonable amount. Again, I think it was actually pretty good. She may have acted as a sort of anchor or safety net, but even in concert, I remember he didn't do too bad. Again, listening to the bit where he says, "Well, the Undertaker drew a heavy sigh, seeing no one else had come," which is where he goes up, as well as "Annabelle was ringing in the village square for the rabbits on the run." If you listen closely, I actually think he nails that part, which I think again kind of proves that the presence of a backup singer might have been a safety net in the case Paul couldn't hit those high notes. But I think if you listen closely, you'll see he didn't do too badly. Also, props to Chad Smith. I'm not sure why Abe wasn't there on drums, but wow, those drum fills were pretty good. He even does a high-pitched scream towards the end, but man, he was lively, he was great in my opinion. I don't really have any complaints. Yes, his voice isn't what it used to be, but again, what are we expecting from an 83-year-old man? I think he's doing just fine. Now, he also performed Coming Up, which is a song I absolutely love. Every live version is incredible, along with the studio version, and seeing it back in October was a dream come true for sure. But unfortunately, SNL hasn't posted the video to YouTube at the time of my recording, but I think his performance was great on that as well. Actually, after some research, I just found a video of it on Tumblr. It's not the full performance, but it's most of it until it cuts out at the credits, so I'll link that below. His voice wavers a bit, especially around the beginning of verses, and he tries to power through it, seemingly to me by adding a bit of grit. But overall, again, as I said, I don't think it actually sounds that bad. Overall, do I think it's time for Paul to shut himself in a cupboard and sulk? Absolutely not. No way. His voice is still capable of producing great music, and while it might be more suited for slow, acoustic, sentimental songs, I think for the most part, his voice can still handle songs like Coming Up, Band on the Run, etc. His voice still struggles with certain parts, but none of it, at least in my opinion, is unlistenable. As long as Paul wants to perform, people will come and listen. I think people are a little upset because they listen to songs from a minimum of 36 years ago and they hear how absolutely great his vocals sound, and they feel a little bad that Paul isn't able to produce that. I also hear people say, well, we won't have him forever, so enjoy it while you can, which I really won't grant either. I think he is still performing and writing to a level that I believe is exceptional. I think Paul has passed his peak, but he's still on top. I think the SNL performances weren't rock show and it wasn't the rooftop concert, but I was pleasantly surprised by how his vocal performance sounded, as well as his bandmates. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Subscribe to hear some more vocal breakdowns and like the video if you actually liked it. I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.